Ladies and gentlemen, gather around because what you're about to hear is absolutely unbelievable, one of those moments in television history that nobody saw coming and everyone is still talking about weeks later, the day that national treasure Dame Julie Walters was literally kicked off Lorraine Kelly's morning show after an absolutely explosive, fiery confrontation that left the entire studio frozen in shock and viewers at home picking their jaws up off the floor. It all started like any other ordinary morning on ITV's Lorraine, the kind of cozy, feel-good chat show we've all grown used to, where celebrities come on to plug their latest projects, share a few laughs, sip tea and leave with a hug from Lorraine herself. But not this time. Oh no, this time the atmosphere turned toxic from almost the very first second Julie sat down on that famous sofa. Julie Walters, the woman who brought us Mrs. Overall, Molly Weasley, Rosie and Mamma Mia, the actress who has made us cry with laughter and sob with emotion for decades, walked onto the set looking elegant as ever in a navy trouser suit, smiling warmly at the audience, waving like the absolute legend she is, while Lorraine greeted her with a usual "Dame Julie, welcome back, you're looking fabulous darling," and everything seemed perfectly normal for the first 30 seconds or so. But underneath that polished surface something was clearly already brewing because Julie's smile was just a little bit too tight, her eyes just a fraction too sharp, and those of us who know Julie's work know that when she is not happy, you feel it in the air like electricity before a thunderstorm. Sources close to the production later revealed that there had already been tension backstage. Apparently Lorraine's team had pushed for certain questions that Julie's publicist had specifically asked to be avoided. Questions about her health battles, her decision to step back from major roles, whether she felt too old for Hollywood anymore, all topics Julie has been very open about in carefully controlled interviews but clearly did not want dragged out on morning television in front of the way Lorraine's researchers had planned. Yet the show went ahead anyway, because Lorraine is the queen of morning TV and what Lorraine wants, Lorraine usually gets. But this time she picked the wrong woman to push because Julie Walters is not some nervous newcomer. She is a dame of the British Empire, a woman who has worked with everyone from Alan Bennett to Meryl Streep, and she was not about to be patronized on live television. So as the cameras rolled and the interview began with the usual pleasantries about Julie's latest project, a small cameo in a new British drama, you could already sense the temperature dropping degree by degree with every question Lorraine asked. Each one just a little more probing, a little more personal, a little more unnecessary than the last, until finally Lorraine crossed the line that should never have been crossed and the entire nation witnessed the moment Julie Walters decided enough was enough. Let's go back to exactly what led to this nuclear meltdown, because the buildup was so gradual that most viewers didn't even realize they were watching a car crash in slow motion until it was far too late. The interview started innocently enough, Lorraine gushing about how much she loved Julie in the Mamma Mia films, asking if there would ever be a third one, standard harmless stuff that Julie answered graciously, laughing about how she would only come back if they let her character Rosie have her own solo this time. The audience chuckled, Lorraine chuckled, everything was fine, but then Lorraine pivoted, as she often does, to the more real questions, the ones she likes to frame as just us girls chatting. And she said something along the lines of, "Now Julie love, you've been very honest about your health scares and stepping away from big roles. Do you ever worry that at your age Hollywood just isn't interested anymore?" And there it was, the question that made Julie's team had specifically flagged as off-limits, delivered with that trademark Lorraine smile that somehow made it sound even more patronizing. Julie paused for just half a second. The kind of pause that in theater terms is called a beat but on live television feels like an eternity, and then she replied with ice in her voice, "Well Lorraine, at my age I'm more interested in whether morning television is still interested in treating its guests with basic respect," and the studio audience let out that collective ooh you only hear when someone has just landed a knockout blow. But Lorraine, to her credit or maybe to her detriment, didn't back down. She laughed it off at first, saying, "Oh come on Julie, we're all friends here, I'm just asking what everyone wants to know," but Julie was having none of it. She leaned forward and said, "No Lorraine, you're asking what gets you ratings. There's a difference," and from that moment on it was war, polite British war but war nonetheless, the kind where every word is sharpened to a razor. Lorraine tried to move on, asking about Julie's grandchildren, but Julie interrupted her, something you never see on these shows, and said, let's not pretend you care about my grandchildren when 2 minutes ago you were implying I'm too old to work, and the tension became so thick you could have cut it with one of those ITV promotional mugs they give away. Backstage, producers were apparently panicking, waving at Lorraine through the glass to wrap the segment. But Lorraine kept going, perhaps thinking she could still salvage it with charm, asking Julie if she felt bitter about younger actresses getting the roles she used to get, and that was the final straw. Julie Walters looked her dead in the eye and delivered the line that has now been viewed millions of times online. Bitter? No, Lorraine. I'm relieved. Relieved I don't have to sit here being talked down to by someone who thinks wearing a different wig every day makes her Barbara Walters. The audience gasped so loudly it was picked up on microphone, and just like that, the mask was off, the gloves were off, and Lorraine Kelly, the woman who has interviewed everyone from prime ministers to pop stars without ever losing her cool, was suddenly the one looking rattled for the first time in decades. Julie didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Every word was delivered with that perfect comic timing she has spent 50 years honing, but each one landed like a slap, and the more Lorraine tried to laugh it off or change subject, the deeper she dug her own grave because Julie was not letting her off the hook. She went on to say, I've watched your show for years, Lorraine, and I've always thought you were better than the tabloid nonsense you sometimes peddle, but today you've proved me wrong. And you can literally see Lorraine's smile freezing on her face, that famous Scottish warmth evaporating in real time as she realized she had miscalculated badly. The crew were frantically signaling for a commercial break, but Lorraine waved them off, perhaps out of pride or perhaps because she thought she could still win the exchange, so she tried one last time to regain control by saying, Julie love, I think you are being a bit sensitive. We're just having a conversation. And that was the moment Julie Walters decided she was done. She looked straight down the camera lens, not at Lorraine, and said, sensitive? No darling, I'm just allergic to disrespect, and this studio is full of it today. And then, in a move that will go down in television history, she calmly removed her microphone pack, placed it on the coffee table between them, stood up and said, thank you for having me, Lorraine, or rather thank you for reminding me why I don't do morning television anymore, and walked off the set while the show was still live. The audience was stunned into silence. Lorraine was left sitting there with an empty sofa beside her and a smile that looked painted on, trying to fill the dead air with, well, that's certainly one way to end an interview. But her voice was shaking and everyone could tell. Within seconds social media exploded. Julie Walters was trending worldwide. Clips of the walk-off were being shared faster than anyone could keep up with, and Lorraine had no choice but to cut to a break 3 minutes early while the producers ran around like headless chickens trying to work out how to salvage the rest of the show. Julie, meanwhile, walked straight out of the studio, got into her waiting car and was driven away without speaking to a single reporter. Pure class from start to finish. The aftermath was immediate and brutal. By the time Lorraine came back from the commercial she looked like she had aged 10 years, apologizing profusely to viewers for the lively discussion and saying she had nothing but respect for Dame Julie. But the damage was already done. The clip of Julie placing that microphone down like she was returning a poisoned chalice had already been viewed over 20 million times and counting. Twitter was on fire, celebrities were weighing in left and right. Dawn French tweeted, "That's my girl," with a fist emoji. Jennifer Saunders posted a gif of Patsy from AbFab throwing a champagne bucket with the caption, "When Julie has had enough, we have all had enough." Even Meryl Streep reportedly sent Julie flowers with a note saying, "Brava, darling, brava." Meanwhile, Lorraine's supporters tried to claim that Julie had been rude and unprofessional, but they were drowned out by the tidal wave of people praising Julie for standing up to what many called years of condescending questioning from certain daytime hosts. Former guests started coming forward with their own stories of being pushed into uncomfortable topics on Lorraine's sofa, one actress claiming she had been asked if she was too fat for certain roles, Another saying Lorraine had grilled her about her divorce in a way that left her in tears off camera. Suddenly the narrative shifted from Julie Walters storms off to Lorraine Kelly finally meets someone who won't take her nonsense. And the public opinion swung heavily in Julie's favor. ITV issued a statement saying the situation had been regrettable and that they had reached out to Dame Julie's team to apologize, but Julie's representative released the most perfect response. Dame Julie has nothing to apologize for and no interest in returning to any show that treats its guests with such disregard. The Sun, The Mirror, The Daily Mail, all of them ran front-page stories calling it the most explosive TV moment since Megxit, and Lorraine herself was noticeably absent from social media for days afterwards, which for her is practically unheard of. Even the usually neutral BBC News covered it, with their entertainment correspondent describing it as a masterclass in controlled fury from one of Britain's greatest living actresses. Merchandise appeared overnight, t-shirts saying "I'm just allergic to disrespect" sold out in hours, and Julie's old films started trending on streaming services as people rediscovered her work, and booking requests for Julie skyrocketed because everyone suddenly wanted the woman who had finally said what so many had been thinking for years. But let's dig deeper because this wasn't just about one bad interview. This moment exposed something much bigger about British television and the way older women, especially working-class success stories like Julie, are still treated by certain parts of the media even in 2025. Julie Walters came from a working-class background in Birmingham, left school at 16 to become a nurse before finding acting, fought her way to the very top on raw talent and grit, and has spent her entire career being the funny friend, the warm mum, the national treasure who makes everyone feel better. But the moment she dares to assert boundaries or refuse to play the grateful old dear, suddenly she's difficult or sensitive. Lorraine Kelly, for all her part, has built an empire on being everyone's favorite TV auntie, asking the questions we all want to know, but too often those questions are actually the ones that sell advertising space during the commercial breaks, the ones that make women over 50 feel small, the ones that reduce decades of achievement to whether they dye their hair or had work done. And Julie simply refused to participate in that charade anymore. She didn't swear, she didn't shout, she didn't throw anything, she simply withdrew her labor and her presence from a space that had become toxic. And in doing so she did what so few women in entertainment ever get to do. She put her own dignity above the demand to be entertaining at all times. That is why this moment resonates so deeply, because every woman who has ever been talked over, patronized, or asked to smile through discomfort saw themselves in Julie Walters that morning. She became, overnight, the patron saint of saying no more. Young actresses started posting videos recreating the microphone drop. Older actresses sent messages of solidarity, and even some male stars like Stephen Fry tweeted Dame Julie Walters, national hero, full stop. Lorraine's ratings actually went up that week because everyone tuned in to see if she would address it properly, but when she finally did, days later, her apology felt half-hearted to many, more concerned with saving face than genuine remorse, which only made Julie look even more dignified by comparison. The whole saga became bigger than either woman. It became about respect, about aging, about who gets to control their own narrative in an industry that chews women up and spits them out the moment they stop being palatable. And Julie Walters, at 75 years old, proved she is more powerful, more relevant, and more beloved than ever before. So where are we now? Weeks after the now legendary walk-off that broke the internet, Julie Walters is reportedly happier than she has been in years, spending time with her family, gardening, reading scripts that actually excite her, and turning down every interview request that doesn't come with a guarantee of basic respect, living her best life and letting the world come to her on her terms. Lorraine, meanwhile, has carried on presenting her show. But something has shifted. Guests are being treated with noticeably more caution, questions are being vetted more carefully, and there is a new wariness in the air whenever an actress over 60 is booked. Some say Lorraine has been humbled by the experience, others say she is too strong a personality to ever truly change, but one thing is certain, she will never again underestimate a woman who has played everything from cleaning ladies to witches and won every major acting award going. Julie, for her part, has not said a single negative word about Lorraine publicly since the incident. When asked about it in a rare statement, she simply said, "I wish Lorraine nothing but the best, but I meant every word I said that day," which somehow managed to be both gracious and devastating at the same time. The clip continues to be viewed, shared, remixed, turned into memes and reaction videos, and has become shorthand for standing up to disrespect in any situation. People post it in workgroup chats when the boss is being unreasonable. Teenagers send it to each other when dealing with difficult teachers. It has transcended television and become cultural shorthand for the power of saying no more, and perhaps that's the real legacy of this whole extraordinary episode. Julie Walters didn't just walk off a chat show, she walked straight into legend status all over again, reminding every woman watching that you are never too old, too famous, or too beloved to demand the respect you have spent a lifetime earning. She didn't need to raise her voice because her silence, after she placed that microphone down, spoke louder than any shouting match ever could, and in doing so she gave permission to millions of women to do the same in their own lives. So thank you, Dame Julie Walters, for the laughter, for the tears, for the unforgettable characters, and most of all for that glorious moment when you reminded the world that some treasures are not here to be polished by just anyone. They shine brightest when they refuse to be dimmed. We salute you.